The 11-1 Eagles soar into MetLife Stadium Sunday to take on the 7-4-1 Giants in a game ripe with playoff implications. Up next, I'll have matchups, who to watch, predictions, and much more. Stay tuned. What's up, everybody? Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Tommy's Takes. I'm your host, Tommy G. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with me, and I appreciate that. Please like, subscribe, turn those notifications on. You could also check me out on Twitter at TommyG105. And as always, check out my Giants Country team, dropping the hottest Giants content out there, from interviews, podcasts, articles, you name it, we got it. Let's get right into it like we always do at this time. Big game Sunday at MetLife. The 11-1 Eagles storming in, best team in the NFL, in a game that's ripe with playoff implications. Eagles right now are the number 1 seed in the NFC and have already clinched a playoff berth. Giants come in as a 6.5-point home dog, and Philly just beat up the number 1 seed in the AFC Titans 35-10. So safe to say the New York Giants are taking on the NFL Giants Sunday, and not going to be an easy one. And I tell you, in doing this opponent prep, and I've been doing this for a little while now, I don't think I've ever seen a team like Philly just check the boxes off. And we'll go through it. We'll go through matchups and some players to watch, positions to watch. But this Philly team puts it all together. And, the Giants' playoff picture is a little murkier, I'm not going to lie. They won 3-1 in their last 5 games on a little bit of a slide here. Obviously, the schedule started to get a little bit tougher. Giants currently have the 3rd most difficult schedule remaining in the league, and they are currently the 6th seed. But Seattle and Washington are hot on their heels. So to say this is a big game for the Giants is the understatement of the year. Obviously, Washington coming up next after Philly is probably going to be an even bigger game, in the standings. But listen, Eagles are the class of the NFL right now, and that may hurt the Giants. That might hurt Giants fans, especially since they have James Bradberry. We'll talk about that in a little while, how he's impacted that defense. For lifetime series, it's pretty close. Eagles hold a slight advantage, 99-88, with 2 ties. We don't want 3 ties, no more ties. And most importantly, though, Philly, similar Giants versus Dallas, Philly holds an 8-2 advantage in the last 10 matchups. And listen, rebuild, whatever stage you want to say it's in, all starts with beating your divisional opponents and the best divisional opponents. So far, Giants 0-2 versus Dallas. This will be the first Philly matchup. You got to start winning some of these games, and you want to start building some of that confidence, some of that swagger, some of that, hey, we're here now emotion. You beat Philly, you beat Dallas. So couldn't do it with Dallas, and here we go with Philly, and they are, like I said, a class of the NFL, behind a much improved Jalen Hurts, top 5 rushing attack, a defense that features the number 1 secondary in all of the NFL, a passing attack that's been on fire lately, showcasing the offseason acquisition of A.J. Brown, which was a huge trade, and first-round pick in 2020, Devonta Smith playing well, and they've been on fire. 108.0 passer rating for Hurts and the Eagles. Number 1 in the NFL in passer rating. So shout out to Jalen Hurts. He came a long way. Last season, you would kind of put him in the same category as Daniel Jones. Just didn't put it together for whatever reason. Just wasn't seeing the field properly. Wasn't putting up the gaudy offensive numbers in the passing game. And he's done it. So give Jalen Hurts a ton of credit. Jones is still working his way there. But 108 passer rating is remarkable. So much credit to the 3rd-year pro. He's earned it. And having a career year, 20 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, throwing 9 rushing touchdowns. When I was putting this together, I was amazed. 9 rushing touchdowns for Jalen Hurts on top of that. Really remarkable. He's coming off back-to-back Player of the Week awards in the NFC. Giants catching him at a maybe a good time, right? Maybe he's due for one. But, what else could you say? Last week versus Tennessee, he's 29 for 39, 380 passing yards, 3 TDs. The Russian attack for Philadelphia has been just as lethal, led by Miles Sanders, 924 yards rushing. And the Eagles overall average 154 yards rushing a game, which is 5th in the NFL. So you have a team that has the number 1 passer rating in the NFL and a team that is top 5 in rushing. So it's going to be pick your poison for defensive coordinator Wink Martindale. And let's be honest, defensively, their rushing defense is not phenomenal. Philly passing defense is, and it hurts because you got a familiar foe in James Bradberry. Giants cut Bradbury before the season started due to salary cap restraints. And, Bradbury alongside Darius Slay form one of the best 1-2 punches in the secondary in the NFL. And as much as that hurts Giants fans, it is what it is. It's going to hurt Giants fans even more on Sunday because Giants are not equipped to pass the ball. Don't have the receivers right now to go after it. Going to have to get creative. That's their D. And they're, number one, first in turnover differential, plus 13. So that right there, when you look at the top teams in the NFL, you're going to see that turnover differential. So plus 13 for Philly. Second in yards allowed on the ground. Passing yards allowed on the ground. They're first in QB rating allowed. QBs are only having a 73.6 rating versus Philly. So this is remarkable. When you try to check this list of stats, and I know right now you're probably saying, so how the heck do we beat this team? Well, because the games are not played on paper, that's why. And especially divisional games, never know what's going to happen in a divisional game. Look at Philly's only loss this year. It was against a struggling Washington team. Washington came into that game, forced turnovers, time of possession, ran the ball well, pretty much checked their boxes, and they won. And didn't matter what the stats said. Didn't matter how good the Eagles were coming into that game because it's divisional. So that's what the Giants are going to be looking for. And, Giants come into this game getting a little bit healthier, at least we thought. But no. Barkley added as a late addition to the injury report. Looking like Leo's probably not going to play. Didn't practice all week. I doubt they put him out there with no practice time. And Giants only have one win in the last 5 games, and they find themselves a loss away from being out of the playoff picture, obviously, depending on the teams around them. And New York's bread and butter running game, for the most part, that 6-1 start was running and rushing and Saquon Barkley. And he has 3.6 yards per carry or less in 4 of the last 5 games. So that's not a good stat. And whether you want to say he's hit a wall or you want to say it's missing Evan Neal and it was missing Ben Bredesen, I think that all kind of counters into it. Barkley is going to crush his career high for rushing attempts and carries, so that takes a toll. There's no question about that. You can't take that away. But New York has to find a way out of it. And teams have been getting really creative stopping the Giants' run, whether that's run blitzing, whether that's stacking 8 or 9 guys in the box. And they've been getting really daring, and they've been daring the Giants to pass the ball. And unfortunately, when it comes to the passing attack, the Giants have not had consistency hitting big plays. And the number one number you could look to when it comes to 20-yard completions or more, Daniel Jones has 21. Jalen Hurts, 42. So if you want to look at a number that says the Giants' passing attack is struggling, there you go. That's it right there on paper. Jones does have a very poor supporting cast around him. I think Jones has played solid for the most part. Whether that's solid enough to get a contract, we'll discuss that. We got plenty of time to discuss that. But I think Jones is tough. He's played hard. He's killing teams with his legs. He has a career high in rushing yards. But you just don't have it around him. And the Giants' offense is at its best when Jones and Barkley are running for first downs. I mean, look at last week. Jones had 5 rushing first downs. Giants didn't win, but that was a big factor in that game. And, when you look at it, they're still 6th in rushing yards in the NFL. So even with Barkley only averaging 3.6 or less in the last 4 or 5, Giants are still up there. That shows you that they've done it and they can do it. But they have to get back to what makes them great and what made them 6-1. And in my opinion, that's running the ball with Jones. That's staying on par for the course with Barkley, not giving up the run game early. And you got some guys back. You got Neal back last week. You got Bellinger back. And, I look for the Giants to run it early and often. This passing attack is not playing well at all for the Giants, unfortunately. You have Darius Slayton, who's made some plays for the Giants, which has been awesome. But overall, teams are not coming into MetLife or playing the Giants on the road saying, hey, we got to stay back. We got to stay in 4 quarters. We got to watch this passing attack. Just not happening. They're going to dare the Giants to beat them with the pass. They're going to stack the box versus Barkley. And that's what Philly's game plan is going to be. And that's what the game plan has been since the first Dallas game. That's where you kind of seen, that the game plan against the Giants work. Stack the box, let Daniel Jones beat you. Offensively against the Giants, you want to attack that linebacking core, that second level. They struggle to cover the pass. They struggle to stop the run, the linebackers. That's been the game plan. So Giants have to self-scout that out, get creative, attack that, because if not, it's going to get tougher. The schedule is only going to get harder. You got Washington next week. You got Philly again. You got Minnesota. Got some tough games coming up. So, it's going to be interesting when you're playing against the best team in the NFL, how you game plan. And defensively for the Giants, I think they played pretty well last week versus Washington. Obviously gave up the game-tying drive late in the fourth quarter. But listen, when they had to make plays, they did. That was a great play by Heineke on that fourth down on that drive. 4th and 4, he scrambles out, makes a nice throw off platform. Sometimes you just tip your cap to the opponent. And I think defensively, that's what it was. They had the big strip sack fumble by Aziz, which helped. And you're going to have to do it again. Giants' defensive line was dominant, let's be honest. 5 sacks, 10 QB hits. The fearsome foursome of Aziz Ojulari, Dexter Lawrence, Leonard Williams, Kayvon Thibodeau, they came to play. You hope they're going to be a force for years to come for the Giants. That's what it looks like. And they showed it on Sunday. And this week is no different. Last week against Washington, the Giants gave up 4.6 yards per carry on the ground to rookie Brian Robinson. 4.3 to Antonio Gibson. So Giants still struggling, stopping the run. And that's going to be a major factor because you have a Philly team that can run the ball very, very well. And you don't want them setting their pass up off the run. You don't want your linebackers, if you're the Giants, sneaking inside to stop the run and they're dipping passes over you because, even when they know teams have to pass, these Giant linebackers struggle in pass coverage. There's lanes wide open. They're taking the wrong angles. So you definitely want to key in on the run, something the Giants have not been able to do. And the Eagles could turn your defense one-dimensional, in a heartbeat if you don't stop the run. That should be number one on Wink Martindale's list. Also pressure and with the front four, not blitzing everyone, not blitzing the house. Giants, in my opinion, don't have the horses right now to blitz like that and to leave a Fabian Moreau on an island, a McLeod, Darnay Holmes. These guys have been getting torched out there. Not going to have Xavier McKinney again. Not going to have Adoree Jackson again. Looking like you're not going to have Leonard Williams this game. So it's going to be a challenge. It really is. Giants are 30th in yards per carry given up on the ground. Yards per game given up on the ground. They're 26th. So that's going to be a little bit of the strategy for the defense. Keying to stop the run. I believe we're going to run a lot more zone this game. I can't see the Giants continuing with man, not against A.J. Brown. You're going to have to do some zones in there and mix it up because man is not going to get it done. And like I said, still missing 2 of your key defensive players. And not to scare Giants fans, but last week, the duo of A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith, 13 catches, 221 yards, and 3 touchdowns. So they're getting it done. And it's going to be a big test for, Moreau, Holmes, and the whole squad. And by now you're probably even saying this is a long shot. This is probably not going to happen. But not so fast. And no games are won on paper. And that's what makes the NFL special. That's what makes these divisional games even more special, more important, because you don't know what's going to happen. And we'll dig into more in the matchups in a little bit. But the Giants, they need to show out, and they need to be physical, stop the run the ball. And Daniel Jones has to have a good game. This can't be a game where you look back and the Giants lost by 7 or 4 and you say, well, he had Bellinger open there and, well, Slayton, he could have hit him over the top there and he took the check down there and he was a check down king and his completion percentage was awesome and he was 18 of 22 for 190 yards. This has to be one of those games where you say, you know what? Daniel Jones showed something today. He hit a couple over the top. He kept the defense honest. He kept 8-9 man out of the box. This has to be that type of game versus Philly. You have to let it all out here. You're playing at home in front of your home crowd. Looking like it might be a little bit of a wintry mix. Not so sure yet. We'll see as we get closer to game time. But, as is December in New Jersey. So I look for Daniel Jones to have a much bigger game. Biggest challenge he's going to have this season going against Bradbury and Slay. And he's going to need to lead the Giants. Can't just be an all Saquon Barkley show. And he's going to have to do it with his legs as well. So, before we move on to the injury report, I want you to stop, drop your predictions in the comments. Anybody that gets the score right, the team right, gets a special collectible out of my closet. If you want to pick the Eagles, go ahead. I'm not going to look down on you. Whatever, if you get the score right, you get the score right. I prefer you pick the Giants, though, and the Giants win, and I give you something nice Giants-wise. But drop the score down there. Haven't been able to give anything away the last few shows. Nobody's guessed it right, including myself with the 1-3-1 in the last 5. But drop those comments in. Want to give something away to you guys and gals. Appreciate that participation. Next, injury report. And this is always the not so fun time as a Giants fan out there. And this week got a little more interesting. You thought you came out of the game versus Washington pretty clean. We knew he had the Leo injury. He went down, I believe it was in the third quarter late, never came back. Hasn't practiced all week. That looks like he's going to be a non-go for Sunday. And then you had a little surprise with Saquon Barkley popping up on the injury report with a neck. And, when Brian Daboll was asked about it, he's like, it's week 14. Guys are worn down. Everybody's hurt. But it is a little curious that they put him on there. And also curious that Daboll wouldn't commit to him playing. He said, we'll see. I think Barkley's going to play. You've seen it with the shoulder injury versus Green Bay. And after the game, he's like, I'm not letting no injury keep me out. Not happening. I'm getting back out there. I anticipate Barkley to be full go Sunday. You have Richie James was limited. You have the usual suspects that were out. Azudu, Adoree, Lemieux. Starting to do a little bit more, all three of those, which is awesome. McKinney had the pins taken out of his hand this week. Didn't really seem like he was close when talking to Daboll. Seemed like he's still probably a few weeks away. But if the Giants could get him back for the last couple games and possibly a playoff run, that would be amazing as well. For the Eagles injury report, and seems like as every single week, the opposing team has less injuries. You have linebacker Sean Bradley, who's he's a backup, but he's a special teams ace, leads the NFL in special teams tackles. Looks like he's not going to play. That's really it. You have Quez Watkins and Kazir White limited. That's it. So, like every other matchup for the Giants, it seems like this year, their injury list is like this, and the other teams is a couple of sentences. But Giants are still 7-4-1 even with that. So shout out to Daboll. Shout out to the guys out there. Special shout out to the players that have been picked up, here and there, and the Fabian Moreaus, the Jalen Smiths. Those guys have been doing well. Hodgins, shout outs to him. He's been playing a lot better. Look to see him get involved more. And with that, we'll get right into our matchup. So first matchup I have, Giants front seven versus the Eagles rushing attack. Like I said before, Eagles are rushing for 154 yards a game. 2 weeks ago versus Green Bay was ridiculous. They had, I want to say it was 363 yards rushing in an NFL game. So Eagles could run the ball ridiculously well. Like I said, Hurts has 600 yards rushing. Miles Sanders is over 900 yards rushing. So how did the Giants stop this, right? You got Leonard Williams, most likely is going to be out, unfortunately. Like I said, you still have your two big secondary guys out. Got to get creative. It's funny when watching the tape this week and you've seen Washington, unveil some of these creative run blitzes. And you have to wonder if maybe Wink was looking at that like, hey, maybe we could pop some of these off. And I think that's the key. You're going to have to get creative versus the run. You don't have the corners right now to stack the box against Philly's rushing attack. Maybe Micah McFadden plays a bigger role. He's a downhill linebacker. He could bring the thumper, right? He's athletic, so I look for that. Need to protect the edges better. So the defensive ends who have been doing an awesome job with pressure, need to keep that contained. And not just for the rushing attack, but for Hurts as well, because he could knock off some long runs. But those ends, or whether it's Ojulari, Thibodeau, Ward, whoever it is, need to keep that contained and not let those outside runs, those outside zone reads pop off on the edges. If they're going to run, let them run up the middle because the Eagles have a great offensive line. We'll get to that momentarily. And maybe a safety in the box. Do you see, maybe a little bit of Belton in this game? He has been playing a lot. Do you put Dane Belton in the box? He's played well in spots there. Do you keep that extra guy down there? Is that too risky? Really don't envy Wink Martindale this week just because the Eagles' offense is that pick your poison type of offense. But Giants will need to stop the run. And those are a couple things I think they can do. And as always, you got to tackle. I thought the Giants' tackling was awful versus Washington. Especially on the last touchdown to tie the game. Two guys, I think it was McLeod and Moreau, had two shots to tackle before the touchdown was scored. Totally whiffed, totally missed. Game-tying touchdown, ends in a tie. Tackling has to get better. And they should look to Julian Love. Julian Love out there is a phenomenal tackler. And I was talking about him earlier in the week. He's not going to be the guy that wows you and, fills up the box score and has 2 interceptions, whatever you want to throw out there. But, he's a tactician. He does things by the book and does it the right way. And you see that when he tackles, he actually wraps up. And that's something that seems like almost like a lost art now when you watch NFL games is nobody's wrapping up. Everybody's shoulder throwing or, trying to go low or trying to strip the ball only. So Giants need to tackle. If you get a shot on Hurts and you can stop him behind the line and Miles Sanders, you have to. You could not give second chances up to this team. You could not allow that to happen. So those are my keys to stopping the Russian attack for the Giants. We're going to move over to Daniel Jones versus the Eagles secondary. So first off, you got Bradbury and Slay. We talked about them enough already. And this is my thing. And, listen, attack the linebackers. You definitely want to attack the linebackers on the Philly defense. That's kind of their weakness there. Don't want to attack the cornerbacks. That's one thing, right? Protection. Offensive line has to protect Jones. Seen a stat this week, combined sacks, hurries, and quarterback hits. He's had 118 against him this year. That's a lot of heat for a quarterback to take. Some he's taken on his own. I think he could do a better job of getting away from sacks. But those are the couple of keys. Now for the main key. So giving this a lot of thought about Daniel Jones as we start to wind the season down, and obviously he doesn't have a contract next year. He wasn't approached during the bye week like Barkley was, and I understand why. When you watch Daniel Jones' game, I don't want to say he plays scared. I want to say there's a little bit of a trust factor that's not there. The question is that trust factor to the pieces around him, or is that trust factor within himself? That also branches out to the coaching staff. How's their trust? Is their trust not in Daniel Jones, or is their trust in, hey, he's going to throw a good ball, but it's going to be dropped. He's going to throw a good ball, but it might be intercepted because the receiver slips and falls or runs the wrong route. Whatever it is, the result of it is check down after check down, bootleg play action after play action, 5 yards, 4 yards, 3 yards, sometimes no yards. There's really that no threat of a deep pass. Took a couple shots last week, but again, you have the play to Slayton where the throw is slightly off and it hits Slayton right in the hands and he can't catch it. And just that offense, the passing offense always has that discombobulated feel. Like something's missing, something's not connecting out there. And you're getting into the stretch run here if you're Daniel Jones. Get out there, die on your sword, take some shots. You know what? If you throw a couple interceptions, oh well. You gave it your best shot. You attacked. You didn't leave any bullets in the clip. You let it all out there. You got 5 games. Prove what you have. Yes, you don't have the weapons. Yes, it's far from ideal around you. But at least come out of this game and say, you know what? The Giants attacked. They took their shots deep. They went for it. They didn't punt it on 4th and 3 at midfield at the end of the game. They attacked. Leave it all out there if you're Daniel Jones. Leave no doubt. I'd rather people say after the game, oh, Jones threw a couple of deep interceptions. Those turnovers hurt. Rather than say, well, he had a great completion percentage and his DVOA was great, but you only had 170 yards passing and the Giants lost. That's the thing. If the Giants are going to lose, go down swinging, Daniel Jones. Show them what you can do. There's plenty of doubters out there that think he can't throw the deep ball, or he's scared to throw the deep ball, or he's comfortable taking the check down. I don't think that's what it is. I think he's not comfortable and doesn't trust in his weapons, and that causes him to not trust in himself throwing to them. And that causes the coaches to not trust the whole situation, and they're playing conservative. I also think the fact that out of nowhere, essentially, this season, the Giants might be a playoff team, and I think everybody's a little bit tighter, and I think the coaching staff is a little bit tighter. And some of those chances they might have took in week 1, 2, and 3 doesn't seem like they're taking them now. So that would be my key to Jones against the Eagles secondary. Attack, attack, attack. All right, so another fun one here. Giants secondary versus A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith. So more zone, less blitz. Not going to be able to blitz this team and leave these guys on an island. I've said it already. Moreau has to play better. Fabian has struggled, rightfully so. He shouldn't really be playing number 1 wide receivers out there. That's not his gig. He's just doing that out of an emergency. And pressure up front. You want to have you're not going to have Leo, obviously, but you want to have a similar game where you have 3-4 sacks, 8 or 9 pressures, a few QB hits. Ultimately, you want to make Jalen Hurts uncomfortable. If he has time to sit back there and tee off and pick your poison back there, it's going to be a long day. And creative game plan with Adoree out and McKinney out, that's going to be key again for Wink Martindale, who I've said a couple times, I do not envy his position right now. He's going to have to get creative. And like I said, he's not going to be able to blitz a lot like he likes. Giants are upwards of 60% blitzing percentage on defense. That's probably not going to cut it this game. I think those are some keys to kind of stop that duo, that dynamic wide receiver duo. But at the end of the day, just got to play well, play fundamentals, wrap up, tackle. Don't fall for double moves. Easy for me to say on this side of the TV, right? But that's what they need to win. So now we'll go to the final matchup, and I think this one is probably the key matchup of Sunday's game. You have the Giants' defensive line versus the Eagles' offensive line. And I hate to break it to everybody, but the Eagles' offensive line is one of the best in the league. They have arguably two of the best players at their position in Jason Kelce at center, Lane Johnson at right tackle. It's funny when looking at the offensive line, they play great, obviously have a great rushing attack. We know that now. But Hurts has been sacked 30 times this season, which places him seventh most in the NFL. So he can be had sack-wise. You can get to him, but going to be tough. One of the most fascinating matchups of this game is going to be Dexter Lawrence versus Jason Kelce. That's going to be a phenomenal matchup, one that I watch closely, and I think that's going to dictate a lot in the trenches. If Dexter Lawrence could win some of those one-on-one matchups, Giants will have a chance to get some pressure and get some sacks. Like I said, sometimes Hurts can play himself into sacks. It does happen. I've seen it happen. It does happen with quarterbacks trying to extend plays. That's normal. But 30 sacks is a lot for your quarterback, and I think the Giants have an opportunity to crack into that, especially with their ends. You've seen Azeez last week, second game back from injury, dominating. You see Kayvon Thibodeau week in, week out, getting better, improving his game. As a rookie, he's right up there with pressures. I think he's second in pressures among rookies, behind Aiden Hutchinson. So, in a quick recap, on paper, does not look pretty for the Giants. Eagles are one of the best passing teams, one of the best rushing teams. They have probably the best secondary in the NFL. They're number one in turnover differential, but that's why you play the game. And I kind of like the Giants' odds because of all this. The pressure's on Philly. They're the 11-1 team. They're supposed to win. They've been beating up on the Giants the last 10 games, right? I will say, too, Jalen Hurts' last, I would say, really bad game was the game at MetLife where he turned it over a few times. Maybe that goes into his head. Maybe that plays a factor. Either way, I think it's going to be a close game. My prediction is Giants 27, Eagles 24. Go drop your prediction down in the comments so I can give you something special. That's it for today's show. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Thank you for being patient as I heal through COVID and get through this. Still a little bit under the weather, but didn't want to miss this one. Please like, subscribe, drop some comments. Check me out on Twitter at TommyG105. Check out my Giants Country team, and we will reconvene on Sunday, hopefully after a Giants W. Peace.